So it's going to be a new product launch again here called Zoho Workerly. Interestingly, as you can see, we have the Zoho Recruit as a product. Is it good for staffing? Do you do a lot of temp workers in your business? This is going to be interesting because we had thought about how we have to make our software adaptive. I was talking about this earlier in the morning. And one of the things that turns out is if you try to start using Zoho Recruit for staffing, it breaks down because it's meant to be more of a CRM in the context of candidate relationship management, and it's for corporations to do their hiring, and it also has a staffing model. So as far as the business itself is concerned, I don't think a lot of people here need introduction. You can go through this, you can read through this, but real quick, companies don't want to take on the responsibility of setting up the payroll and the whole shooting match. They want to kind of outsource their contracts and their people resource requirements to third-party staffing agencies who send out people purely for a temporary period of time. And in this context, when I say temporary, it does not mean a contractor. You could have a contractor instead of an employee for a long period of time. But these staffing agencies deal with people where you have to say, oh, I have an event in Las Vegas happening next week. I need 500 technicians, AV technicians. I need about 200 plumbers and 100 electricians and whatnot. So this is a job that kind of goes on no more than it's hourly based or time based, no more than 6 to 8 days or 6 to 12 days or maximum about 30 days or whatnot. But everything is hour based, and you just bring in people on demand basis. That's all the whole industry is about. Now, this is not something that you can model inside Zoho Recruit. So what do we do? Let's look at the typical workflow in the case of the temp agencies as to how they go about this. So you have a client who comes in and says, I need about 500 contractors. They post what the job is, and then the agency takes in the request, and then they post the job on their job boards and whatnot, and they have a database of all their temp workers in their staffing module. And based on the kind of requirement and preferences that they have for specific workers, they create those jobs and they assign the jobs to temp. Now, it's not mandatory that all the temps should accept the job that they are being offered. A temp needs to accept the job. When they accept the job, they start working, they start doing time tracking, then they start invoicing, and then the whole cycle of billing and everything comes into play. This is not something that you can model inside Zoho Recruit. So what did we do? We said we'll introduce a product called Zoho Workerly. This is, as we call, the permanent solution for temporary staffing. Does it look familiar, guys, for those who have used Recruit? Pretty much, yeah. It is actually built on the same framework. And as you can see here, there are a few tabs. Starts up with the dashboard. Let's get to the whole business of hiring a temp. So the request, as such, comes from a client. So we have a list of clients here in the system. And what I'm going to simulate here is going to create a job request that will then be assigned to a temp. The temp will be notified on his mobile, and the temp will either choose to accept or reject the job offer or the temp work that has been raised. So let's go through that exercise here. So go to jobs. I'm going to create a new job here. Let's say it's going to be a nanny service. Client name, I'm going to pick up Zilker Technologies. And the client approver, it shows me the list of all the contacts I have within this client that I have in my data set. And it's going to be an all-day affair. And I'm going to say something funny here. So I'm going to start at 11:30 p.m. And the number of temps that I require are 1. Job title is nanny service for Mr. West and Miss K. So I need 4 to 5 years of experience. The job status is new, and The job owner is the admin who's creating this job request, which is Zoholic's Guru. It's asking me for some information here. I'm going to go through the billing details. So I'm going to be billing the customer on a daily basis because this is a one-day job. And the basic pay per hour is about $200. Let's go with that number. And then I'm also going to basically ask for the benefits in terms of like the social insurance tax and all the other components that go along with this type of service. I'm going to say it's going to be 7%. And then I want to add my agency's margin on top of this per hour charges that I'm going to request from my client. I'm going to say my margins are going to be 15%. And then it tells you what's the client charges per hour is. It automatically calculates that number, and then it asks you for the address. Again, by the virtue of the fact that I've maintained my client's information, it pops up here. I'm going to say it's going to be the head marketing office. And when you create a job, you can have a transactional way of having the temp accept the job. It can either be you just send it out and then he has to do the job, or you can send it out to the temp and the temp must accept the job and then come to do it. So let's accept the job offer. Let's basically set up the job to be driven in such a way that the temp has to actually accept this job role. So coming back. So I now have created the job. The next thing is to assign this to the temps that I have in my data set or in my database. So all my temps are here in this page. I have quite a few of them. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to select a particular temp that I have, and I'm going to assign. I go back to the jobs here real quick. Service, action, assign the job to the temp. Now, by default, there are certain filters that are set up. Let's take a look at what happens when you create a job request or a job definition. So as you can see, based on the job description, Workerly comes up with these parameters here based on which it basically says I only need all those temps in my database who have availability, number one, between the time and date of the service that has been requested for, and the base pay per hour for this temp is equal to the billing rate that you have going to propose to the customer, and then the current title. If there is a match for this title, only then the temp will even be shown in this view. So what I'm going to do right now, I'm just going to make it all open-ended and just remove this. And you can put in your own criteria out there and define what kind of temps need to be assigned for what kind of job roles here. So as you can see, I have just about all the temps that are showing up here. Select Tom and assign this job role or this particular temp task to him. And then finally, I'll say assign and notify. So it has the Workerly app. It works on iOS and all Android devices. So a notification is sent to the temp to who this job has been assigned. Now, you can also bulk assign the job. So let's say there's a request for 100 nannies because there's a huge show that Kanye West is putting up in New York City, and then in the vicinity of New York City, you need 100 nannies, right? So you can bulk assign the task to the temps that you have in your database. At which point, the app notifies each of the temp workers, and they choose to either accept or reject the job offer that they are getting. If they do accept, then they have the ability to log a timesheet from their mobile, right, and specify how many hours they have worked on that job, if it's a time-based activity, or if it's going to be on the completion of a job. Maybe it takes it for them 3 days to complete the job. Maybe it's fixing a kitchen or something along those lines. The contractor takes it up, finishes the job, and then at the end of completion, he says, job completed. At which point, the information goes back to Workerly, and it says, the job has been completed, and the temp has worked X number of hours or X number of days on the activity. Now, it doesn't just stop there. You then send out the timesheet entry to your client, who then approves or disapproves of the job that has been completed or not. If it has been approved, then you get to the next stage of creating invoice. So the sweet thing here is Workerly comes integrated with Zoho Books. When you have the payment set up in your Zoho Books set up to accept credit cards or PayPal or whatever payment systems that Zoho Books supports, the invoice goes out there, the customer can actually pay you. The transaction gets into your journal entries, your accrual transaction. The whole accounting piece is also taken care of. At this point, in the first release that we have, the free version of Workerly, it can only get to the point of doing time tracking. It cannot invoice. We have the freemium model, as is the Zoho business model, right? We have the freemium model, which can have up to 2 temps and 5 jobs that can be created, as long as that's the kind of business that you're in. You can do assigned jobs. You can set up the two-way handshake, whether or not to accept or reject the job, and then you can do the time tracking, and that's where it stops. If you need invoicing, you need to go to the paid model, and there, when you go to the paid model, Zoho Books is included in the offer. You don't have to buy Zoho Books separately. If you already have a Zoho Books, then we have ways and means to integrate with your existing Zoho Books account. So we went through some of these features already. So we have client management, temp staff management, job management, time management, and invoicing. So the vision, going back to your question, is to actually pull data from direct placement and executive search. Zoho Recruit is one piece of it, but I'm sure there are a lot of other ecosystem vendors out there from who we will be pulling that information. Now, when it comes to temp management, you have the mobile app, which is what I think all the temps will actually be using. And there's also a web portal wherein whenever a task is completed and the time tracking is done, a notification is sent to the actual client. And when they receive the email, they will have a link to access the portal to accept or reject the timesheet entry that's been provided by the agency or by the temp staff. Job management in terms of specifying filters and making sure that the jobs are assigned to the right people. That's one of the aspects that we actually went through. Job scheduling. And one more thing that I was talking to the product manager, it does come up pretty frequently in the staffing industry, is you would start your job, let's say in Eastern time zone, and let's say I go from here to Vegas. At that point, I start at 9 a.m. here, but by the time I finish my day there, it's 6 p.m. Pacific. At that point, you need to make sure that you're doing the time tracking across the time zones, and that's where the geofencing capability will also come into play, and you will not kind of leak time or kind of lose time because of time zone differences. Pretty common scenario in the staffing industry. Thank you.